God bless you, and welcome to another episode of God at Work. And today we're doing something a little bit different. A dear friend of mine, who you've met in if you've watched many of the programs, Pastor Hector Gimenez, they were celebrating this past weekend their 40th anniversary from when the ministry began. And Hector and I have been working together for 32 years, actually. I met him 32 years ago. Can you believe it? 32 years. And we've been traveling and working together, for translation and speaking and things like that for 30 years together, actually. So it's been pretty amazing what God's been doing. But it's incredible watching him tell the story. I just finished doing the program in Spanish with him, and I want to give you the highlights of it so you can see all the amazing things God's done in 40 years and is still doing. Way back at the beginning, when they started out, up until now, you can see pictures where the theater is full of people. And Hector tells a little bit of some of the principles that he's learned over the years in building this church that at one time was the second largest church in the world at one point, and then through different dividing and branching off some of the annex churches into being their own separate entity and things like that. The numbers have changed quite drastically. But it's amazing how he still keeps going in spite of ups and downs and problems all over. He still kept going. It's amazing. So there's a song that when Jerry and I used to go down there frequently, a song that sort of became like their theme song. It was called Amigo del Alma. And to be honest, it had never been done in English. They were having a hard time getting a translation for it. But it was one of their favorite songs. Every time we'd go down there, somebody would ask to have it sung. To the point that when Hector's brother passed away, it was used as the theme song for his service, Amigo del Alma, which means my soul friend, my true friend. And it says, Amigo del Alma, amigo sincero, my sincere friend. And so I've asked Jerry if he would do this. We got it finally. Just the night before last, we got it done. A dear friend of ours, Gabrielle, did it in English for us. So hope you'll enjoy it. My soul friend.
My soul friend forever, always true and sincere. You're my love and desire, my Lord and my God. You're the way we must follow, the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father unless it's by you. My soul friend forever, always true and sincere. My greatest desire is to love you, my King, with all my mind and my strength, all my soul and my being. I surrender my heart to you, and your love will live forevermore. My soul friend forever, always true and sincere. You're my love and desire, my Lord and my God. You're the way we must follow, the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father unless it's by you. My soul friend forever, always true and sincere. My greatest desire is to love you, my King, with all my mind and my strength, all my soul and my being. I surrender my heart to you, and your love will live forevermore. I wandered and drifted, was rejected and homeless. I turned my back on you, Lord, and went my own way. But in my pain and my sorrow, I eagerly sought you. You stretched out your hand to me and asked me to stay. My soul friend forever, ever true and sincere. My greatest desire is to follow you, Lord, to follow the pathway that will lead me to heaven. leaving this world behind. And your love will live forevermore. Oh, my soul friend forever, always true and sincere. You're my love and desire, my Lord and my God. You're the way we must follow, the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father unless it's by you. My soul friend forever, always true and sincere. My greatest desire is to love you, my King, with all my mind and my strength, all my soul and my being. I surrender my heart to you, and your love will live forevermore. Yes, your love will live forevermore.
Praise God. So 40 years they've been celebrating. 40 years of ministry, 40 years together. And it's incredible what God has done in those 40 years. Watching this man, in spite of one thing after the other coming against him. You better believe when you're ministering, and at the beginning, when he started, when they first moved into Buenos Aires, they had 7 services a day, 7 days a week. I mean, they had seven days a week, 24 hours a day, not 7 services a day. I'm sorry. But they had services 24 hours a day, reaching people from one end of the country to the other, because they had got radio going and television going. And amazing what God was doing, reaching people that nobody else could reach. And with Hector's background, it was amazing. He started out in a suburb outside, and he'll tell you a little bit about it, in a suburb outside of Buenos Aires, in an area called Escobar. And it was a very small little ministry, very small little ministry. He was reaching out to drug addicts, and I'll let him explain a little bit of that to you. But from reaching out to these drug addicts, it grew and grew. Family members, and that God told him to move into the city, and he moved in and did a crusade at Astro's Theater, and he's going to tell you a bit about that. And so there's, can you just put the picture of their 40th anniversary up? There we go. There it is, celebrating 40th anniversary from 1982 to 2022. That's a pretty long time. A lot of churches don't make it that far. A lot of pastors burn out and die before that time. But they're still carrying on. And as Hector said later on, he says, and he's going to be doing it for another 40 years. But anyways, so Hector's going to talk a little bit. As you see in this next picture, when they move from the Astros Theater, they move to a theater called La Roca. And they put across the top, which means the rock. And they wrote across the top of it, Jesus Christ is the rock. And there's the name of their church, Ondas de Amor y Paz. There were so many people, I had to take a couple of pictures and paste them side by together, so you can see it's still joined in with the paz, the word is still the same. And the people were lined up down to the corner, around the next side of the block, around the block, coming back the other way. There was times that they had to wait 2 or 3 services to get in because there were so many people. And they would wait and get in after 2 or 3 services. They'd have to wait. But what God did was amazing. There's a picture inside the theater here when the theater was filled, and they were doing services, remember, 24 hours a day. And the ones in the middle of the night, they weren't maybe as full as this, but they had a lot of people in them. And so I'm going to let Hector tell you a little bit about it. So here's Hector, and he's going to talk about some of these beginnings.
¿Cómo estás, Rauna? Un gusto estar acá con vos en el programa, con toda la audiencia. Bueno, feliz. Uno por agradecido. Yo estaba agradecido porque Cristo me salvó, Cristo me sacó de las drogas, de la muerte, transformó mi vida. Yo no tenía esperanza. Yo creí que nací para sufrir y que iba a morir sufriendo y que no iba a llegar a los 20 años porque yo vivía drogándome, robando para drogarme, pero bueno, Cristo se cruzó en mis caminos, me salvó y yo dije, quiero compartir esto. Y lo empecé a hacer con adictos a las drogas y lo junté en mi casa. Y cuando un adicto, un alcohólico, alguien de la delincuencia se transforma, se libera, cambia, e impacta a toda la familia, porque un adicto tiene envuelto en su adicción, en su alcoholismo, en su mala vida, a toda la familia, pero cuando se convierte, cuando cambia de vida, toda la familia es impactada. Y cuando yo me quise acordar, eh, impactamos a 30, 40 adictos, alcohólicos, gente en situación de calle que fueron liberados, transformados milagrosamente. Fue impactada la familia y cuando nos quisimos acordar, primero éramos 11, después fuimos 33, después fuimos 99 y bueno, después se hizo incontable y, y bueno, se nos abrieron las puertas de la ciudad de Buenos Aires, la capital federal, y fue increíble, porque Dios nos abrió las puertas de la radio a las 3 de la madrugada, y yo no sabía que hay una generación de hombres y mujeres que no duermen de noche, y yo pensé, ¿a quién le voy a predicar a las 3 de la mañana? Pero me llevé una sorpresa porque hay muchísima gente que no puede dormir por la culpa, por la soledad, por el fracaso, por la enfermedad, y están ahí escuchando la radio porque tienen los ojos hinchados, no pueden mirar televisión porque tienen sus ojos irritados de no poder dormir, pero sí en la oscuridad escuchan la radio y bueno, yo me metí en sus casas y fue un impacto. Cuando los convocamos en un teatro en la calle Corrientes, que es una calle principal, una avenida principal en la ciudad de Buenos Aires, a pocos metros del obelisco, que es un lugar emblemático en la ciudad de Buenos Aires, nos llevamos una sorpresa de que había 800 personas esperándonos un lunes a la mañana en el teatro. Y bueno, y ahí fue una cosa fuera de lo común. Nunca había pasado ni en lo espiritual en las iglesias, ni había pasado en un teatro, que un teatro se llene un lunes a la mañana. Los teatros se llenan los viernes a la noche, los sábados, los domingos a la noche, pero un lunes a la mañana en ninguna ciudad del mundo se llena un teatro y nosotros llenamos un teatro un lunes a las 10 de la mañana y esto llamó la atención a la televisión, a las revistas, a los diarios y cuando nos quisimos acordar quedamos, se enteró el país de que había un avivamiento de Jesucristo en el Teatro Astros, que Jesús hacía milagros, que cambiaba vidas en el Teatro Astros. Y bueno, venía gente de todo el país, ¿no? Fue una cosa sobrenatural. Fue un avivamiento que ocurrió en nuestro ministerio. Nosotros éramos un grupo de 150 personas y en una cruzada milagrosa de 3 meses nos transformamos en un grupo de 3.000 personas. Así que fue una cosa de Dios. Y Dios tocando a gente de todos los niveles, gente de clase baja, gente de clase media y aún gente de clase alta. Y hasta me llegaban a llamar en ese tiempo el pastor de los famosos, porque artistas, periodistas, músicos, deportistas, se convirtieron a Cristo, una cosa de Dios, realmente.
Amén.
Y bueno, ahora han pasado 40 años, pero bueno, estamos como Caleb. Caleb decía, la misma fuerza, la misma bendición que tuve a los 45, lo tengo ahora a los 80. Bueno, eso me pasa a mí, eso le pasa a nuestra iglesia. Ayer, sábado y domingo, festejamos nuestro aniversario número 40 y pasaron unas 10.000 personas el sábado y unas 10.000 personas el domingo. Así que
Estoy mirando por internet, fue increíble. Estoy mirando.
creemos que viene algo mayor. Estamos declarando la palabra profética de que la gloria postrera será mayor que la primera.
Amen. So they carried on and went on. It was amazing. I have a picture here that I kind of think is a funny picture, actually. It's when Hector and I first met. This is in 1990. There's when we first met. We're both quite young looking there, don't you say? And then we started working together at that point and watching what God was doing, how he was doing it. It really interested me and intrigued me how they would do this. Like when you're having service 24 hours a day with people lined up outside waiting to get in, I always wondered because they never took a break to let all the people go and then let the others come in. And I always wondered, how do they make this exchange of people? How do they know that it's a new service starting? And I watched and I finally got it explained. When they would finish one service and people were coming forward to get prayer, they knew they would come down the center aisle with their belongings, come down the center aisle, and go out on the sides to exit. And that's when the new people, when the lineup started coming in, as those ones got up to the front, the new ones would come in and fill up all the space. And they did that all day long, every single day. And then they started going into stadiums. And here you can see a picture. Luna Park Stadium. It was the largest indoor stadium in the country. It was the largest indoor stadium in the country. And it held several thousand people. And this is one of the services shortly after we met and we started working together. And we had a group of pastors that were there for this meeting. So I had to translate everything Hector was saying. And it was quite amazing what God was doing. And the pastors that came from all over the world to watch this, they couldn't believe it. But then Hector's going to tell you a little bit about how he started filling stadiums, not just this one, but stadiums all over the world. He started all over the country. He started filling them and allowing God to move. And he'll explain how all this took place in a meeting he had with Billy Graham.
Sabés que yo tuve la bendición de conocer personalmente a Billy Graham cuando vino a Buenos Aires. Y yo le pedí al Señor, yo creo en la transferencia divina, así como Moisés le transfirió la unción a Josué, así como David le transfirió la unción a Salomón, así como Elías le transfirió la unción a Eliseo. Yo dije, cuando venga Billy Graham a la Argentina, yo voy a robarle 3 minutos y le voy a pedir que me transfiera la opción de llenar estadios, porque nunca en la Argentina un pastor argentino había llenado estadios. Y vino Billy Graham y yo tuve el privilegio de estar con él personalmente y le pedí que me transfiera la unción para llenar estadios en nuestro propio país, y él oró por mí y así fue. Llenamos el estadio Luna Park, que tiene 15.000 personas, y después llenamos Alboy, que tenía 25.000 personas, la cancha de Vélez, que tenía 35.000 personas, la cancha de Boca, que tenía 45.000 personas, la cancha de River, que tenía 80.000 personas. Bueno, Dios nos permitió llenar todos los estadios de fútbol más importantes de Argentina, los llenamos de gente para la gloria de Jesús.
Hallelujah. And as pastors all over the world, what Hector was doing was something that was completely new, unheard of. There was no church around the world at that time that had churches 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There was no churches that had people lined up around the block. Now, sure, you get people lined up waiting to get into movie theaters and sporting events, but I'd never even heard of people lined up to get inside to a church service, but they sure were there. They were lined up. And so then when pastors from all over the world started hearing about this and started coming to see what was going on, and then asking Hector to come and speak in their countries. Now, a lot of them didn't speak English or Spanish. And so I had to go and translate for him. There was one time he went to do some meetings at TBN in Florida, and I went with him. I was no intention of translating. Actually, it was the trip that I had just been given Spanish by God. I mean, had never used it until then. And we get to the television station, and it was crazy what happened. We get there, and the program director came and said, "Hector, I'm sorry, but we're not going to be able to film today. The translator has not shown up and is not able to come." And Hector looks at the guy. I almost died. He said, "Oh, that's okay. I brought my own translator." And here was, a lot of it was filmed, a lot of it was live. And on live television, having 8 days earlier, 10 days earlier, not spoken a word of Spanish, I was having to translate for him on live television. That was pretty stretching for me. But God did it. As he started getting invitations all over the world, impacting countries that you couldn't imagine. All over. He was in England. Actually, there's a picture right here of when he was in England. Speaking at Faith Camp, a huge meeting in England. And then he was in Italy, in Nigeria, Lithuania, Latvia, Ukraine, and Russia, both of the countries that are so much in the news now. He was in all these countries. He was in Hawaii, in the trips to the States. But then there's a newspaper article. It showed up in a secular newspaper in Canada. It says, "Revival in Argentina." And then under the picture, it says Hector Gimenez, 34-year-old pastor of one of the largest churches in the world. One of the world's largest churches. 34 years old he is in that picture. Long time. But it's amazing how he still keeps going and God keeps using him. And then there's a picture here in Venezuela. It's amazing. In Venezuela, a stadium. That stadium was used for bullfights, to slaughter bulls in that stadium. But this was a Christian meeting that Hector and I were doing. And they'd never had that stadium filled for a Christian event at that time, years ago. But they started filling that stadium as the anointing was started to really start to flow in that city of Maracaibo in Venezuela. It was awesome what God was doing. Absolutely awesome. But then, Hector, we're talking a little bit about their 10th anniversary, because I had a group of pastors from all over that had come down to see what was going on. They were all pastoring fairly prominent churches, most of them, and their lives were so impacted. During the 10th anniversary, he did a seminar called Seeds of Multiplication. And it was key principles that God had given as to how things had happened in his church and in his ministry. But one of the keys wasn't a step-by-step formula. One of the keys was being obedient to what God showed you for your church and for your city. And as you stepped out in that obedience, you would see things like this happen. We also talked about the pandemic. Churches all over the world shut down. Many had to, like here in Canada, we couldn't carry on having regular services during the pandemic. It wasn't allowed. All the churches had to shut down. And a lot of them went on to Zoom and other social media programs and things like that. And then others just closed down completely. There's some that have started back up again in person. There's some that have chosen to stay on computer programs. And there's others that have never and probably will never open up again. But throughout the pandemic, they carried on. And God gave him a key as to how to do it. They weren't allowed to meet it's the beginning, and they went and talked to the mayor of the city and got it all worked out, and he'll explain it. Nor were pastors or anybody allowed to go into hospitals or seniors' residences or any of those type or prisons to minister during the pandemic. But they had a key, and I'm going to let him tell you. I'm not even going to get into this one, how they did it.
Gracias a Dios, Dios tocó al intendente de la ciudad. Él es de familia cristiana y él entendió que la iglesia es una embajada y que no se podía cerrar y que para que la ciudad sea protegida, él tenía que permitir que los que quieran hacer reuniones la hagan. Así que la mayoría de los pastores tenían miedo y cerraron la iglesia porque murieron varios pastores por causa del COVID, pero nosotros estuvimos abiertos y, y formamos un grupo de voluntariado que a los pastores no dejaban entrar a los hospitales, a los geriátricos, a la cárcel, pero nosotros hicimos un grupo de voluntariado que limpiábamos los hospitales, limpiábamos los geriátricos y donábamos el material de limpieza. Entonces, claro, los directores de los hospitales, de la cárcel, de los geriátricos, nos recibían con los brazos abiertos porque veníamos a limpiar el lugar y donábamos el material de limpieza, así que eso ellos nos recibían con los brazos abiertos, pero ignoraban que nosotros éramos pastores y nosotros nos vestíamos todo así como personal de limpieza y entrábamos a los hospitales, seguimos entrando a la cárcel, seguimos entrando a los geriátricos y muchos lugares fueron guardados milagrosamente, especialmente los geriátricos, porque cuando alguien se contagiaba en un geriátrico, se contagiaban la mayoría de los ancianos y el 70, el 80% de los ancianos morían, pero nosotros logramos meternos así como de incógnita, como se hace la iglesia subterránea en los países comunistas. Nosotros nos metimos escondidos a través de un grupo de limpieza y nos metimos a los hospitales y mientras la mayoría limpiábamos, unos cuantos ungíamos a los enfermos, a los presos, a los ancianos, y después nos terminaron descubriendo los directores, ¿no? Porque los testimonios fueron tremendos, entonces entendían de que nosotros no éramos un personal de limpieza, éramos un personal de limpieza pero espiritual, porque a donde íbamos a limpiar el hospital, la cárcel, ocurrían milagros en medio del COVID. Por mucho tiempo, casi el primer año de la pandemia, muy poquitos eran vacunados, no teníamos vacuna y bueno, pero Dios nos guardó milagrosamente y realmente mantuvimos la iglesia abierta y también nos metimos donde los ángeles tenían miedo a pisar, ahí fuimos y pisamos nosotros en el nombre de Jesús.
And, one thing that I noticed over the years, at the beginning when they were doing services 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, very frequently, Hector was doing a lot of it. And it paid a toll on his own life, his family. It paid a toll. It was really difficult for him and for the church and for the ministry. And there was a lot of ups and downs during that time, but he still carried on, pressed on forward. He went through some situations that were very difficult, and a lot of pastors would have crumbled under them. But God gave him the strength and gave him people around him to help get through these times. And one of the things that I noticed that he learned over the years, he went to a pastor's conference a couple of times in Hawaii with Pastor Wayne Cordero. And at that pastor's conference, there were some principles that Wayne stood on and taught. And one of them was the importance of doing church as a team, the importance of working as a team and not just one head doing everything. And I honestly believe that saved Hector's life because he was completely burning out doing 24/7 and all these other issues were coming up. But when he did that and they switched from doing 24 hours a day, now they're doing 5 services a day. I know they went down to 7 or 8, and then now they're doing 5 services a day. And he's got a good team around him. Here's a little clip as well from a little greeting from Pastor Wayne Cordero.
Hector, I wanted to say happy anniversary.
Héctor, deseo decirles feliz aniversario.
40 years.
40 años.
So I send my love to you and Carla.
Así que les envío a ti y a Carla mi amor.
And from all of us at New Hope, congratulations.
Y de todos aquí en New Hope, Enhorabuena.
God bless you.
Dios les bendiga.
Él marcó mi vida, Wayne. Aprendí que no es, yo venía de una escuela donde el pastor, el líder tenía que hacer todo, pero yo aprendí con Wayne que no es lo mucho que uno hace, sino lo mucho que otros hacen a través de uno. Y hoy yo tengo como 120 discípulos que andan por todos lados predicando el Evangelio, haciendo radio, televisión, yendo a los hospitales, a la cárcel. Es impresionante cómo se ha multiplicado.
There's another picture that Jerry's going to put up here, and it was fairly recently. It was done in this theater where they're working. But if you go back to well, that's the new one now. That's just fairly recently, within the last 2-3 years. And so you see the place is still packed. And now if you go back to the early picture inside the theater, and you'll see it's also, 40 years. And I won't say that every service has been that way, but there have been periods where every single service has been that way. But watching what God was doing, absolutely phenomenal. And then we're trying to work it out. Hector's been trying to get me to give him some dates to work it out for when we can go down to Argentina and take another team. There's people that have been asking when Hector talked about at my daughter's funeral, at her celebration of life. He talked about how they're inaugurating a house in Argentina after Charity. They're going to be calling it Charity's House because Charity had a heart to work with women, single mothers, women who were struggling with addiction problems or homelessness and things like that. And she had a really powerful heart for those people. And so Hector's opening this house for women that are going through these issues and calling it Charity's House. And he wants us to come down. He wants Jerry and I to come down and others that are asking when they do this inauguration. So we're trying to set a date for that right now. And if any of you are interested, let me know. I mean, you have to pay your own way. They're not paying your way, but you have to pay your own way. But they're going to be doing that. And we'll be doing, of course, a bunch of other services and things like that while we're down there. So this is Hector's talking a little bit. And then he's talking about how if I don't get down there soon, he's been promising he's coming up here. So it's been too long that we haven't been able to get together between having been in the hospital and the pandemic and things being shut down. It was just too long. So we're going to work that all out. So we're going to be getting there together. And then Hector prayed to close the service. ¿Tú puedes orar para cerrar el programa, Hector? ¿Tú puedes orar?
Padre Celestial, Dios de amor y misericordia, te doy gracias, Señor, por esta comunicación con Rauna, con todos los que están mirando este video. Yo imparto la bendición de estos 40 años de victoria y se ha cumplido tu palabra, que todo ayuda bien a aquellos que con un propósito divino fuimos llamados a tus caminos, Señor. Lo bueno y lo malo nos edifica. Y yo puedo decir que en estos 40 años tú me has edificado en las pruebas, en las luchas, y puedo decir, como dijo Samuel, Ebenezer, hasta aquí me ayudaste, Señor. Yo imparto esa bendición de fortaleza, esa bendición de constancia, de perseverancia en medio de la adversidad. Señor, que ocurran milagros sobre pastores, pastoras, sobre hermanos y hermanas que están pasando luchas, que están pasando pruebas, que están pasando enfermedades, problemas financieros, problemas familiares. Señor, que ocurra el milagro y que no bajen los brazos, porque tú premias al esforzado y valiente. Tú premias al que lucha a pesar de la adversidad. Yo bendigo a todos y declaro victoria, declaro que los próximos 7 meses del año serán sobrenaturales para la gloria del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Amén y amén.
Amén. Gloria a Dios. There's a little image that I like Jerry to put up. And it's something that was in Hector's heart, actually. Don't quit before the miracle happens. Too many times we quit. We get tired of waiting, or it's not happening the way we think it should happen, and we quit just before the miracle happens. Don't quit before your miracle happens. Don't quit before that which God is doing in and through you is fulfilled. If God's put something on your heart, even if it's not happening the way you think it should, in the time frame you think it should, just let God do it. Don't quit before your miracle happens. Then, we're going to close this program with a song called Prodigal Son. And it fits Hector's life, because Hector, when he came to know the Lord, he was running from the police and had 2 bullets in him. And the nurse that came into this place where he was in hiding was a Christian and shared the gospel with him. And he received the Lord. And then from there, that's when he ended up starting the ministry a little bit later in Escobar. He started working with another church, sort of as an evangelist, but they didn't really want the type of work with the drug addicts or that type of thing that he was doing, and he felt God was calling him to it. So he went and actually started that church, working out to the prodigal sons. So here's the song, Jerry, Prodigal Son.
Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? There was a man who had 2 sons. One wanted to leave. He said he'd take his inheritance and do as he pleased. The younger son got it all together and journeyed away to waste his life in riotous living, playing foolish games. When he had spent all, there came a famine in the land. He began to be in want, with nothing left in his hands. He went to work for a local farmer, feeding the swine, living on the husks of the world and no longer drinking wine. Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? 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 When he came to himself, he said, I'm going back home. My father's servants have enough to eat, and I'm dying all alone. I'll arise and go to my father and say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven, please take me in. Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? 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 His father saw him coming and rejoiced inside, called his servants to prepare a feast, bring out the new wine. Oh, let us sing and let us be merry. He's now safe and sound. My son was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. Let us sing and let us be merry. He's now safe lost and is found. Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? Oh, hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son? Hasn't everyone been a prodigal son?
Well, I do hope that this has been an inspiration for you, a blessing for you. I love hearing Hector's stories and the things and the way he's done things that are very different, things that probably most pastors wouldn't even think of doing, but he still does it because God gives him, he's given him as John Wimber said in the title of his life story video, he said, "I'm a fool for Christ. Whose fool are you?" And that's really Hector's heart, to do whatever Christ asks of him, no matter how crazy it might seem. So I hope that this has blessed you. And if you feel you'd like to sow into this ministry, please feel free to do so. Jerry will put the details up on the screen, and it will be there available for you. But in the meantime, God bless you. Be blessed, and we'll see you next week.